Hey everybody, this is Donovan from Springfield Music, and I want to welcome you to Mo Better Bands, which is both a podcast and a YouTube channel where we talk with instrumental music educators in Missouri and Kansas about their programs, their successes, their challenges, and so much more. If there's a topic or an educator that you'd like to hear, drop me an email at donovan@springfieldmusic.com. That's DONOVAN at springfieldmusic.com. Okay, let's get to today's guest.
Well, I'm really excited about having this conversation with you guys today. Obviously, Steve, you and I go way back to our Tulsa days, yeah. And I have so many fond memories of getting to be a student teacher for you and Darren, and just be able to watch all the things that you guys did at Broken Arrow over the years. And when I put together this podcast, I kind of had from the beginning knew like, man, I at some point really want to bring Steve and Lindsey on to talk about some of the things that you guys deal with, specifically with marching bands, ensembles, color guard, visual concepts. There are a million topics that we could talk about. And we kind of mentioned before that if we tried to like take everything you guys know and distill it, this podcast would be about a week long. Yep. So we'll have to have you come back and be recurring guests, which I'm sure everyone would be thrilled with. But we wanted to talk about a couple of topics that we felt like were really relevant for the time of year we're in right now. We're recording this in mid-May of 2021. And Lindsey, when I asked, like, all right, what are some relevant topics you want to talk about? You just right out of the gate had something that you were really passionate about that I think is an extremely pertinent message for everyone. And it was about being realistic. So with that being said, I'm going to just let you go. Why should educators give themselves the peace of mind of being realistic?
I'm so glad you have the ability to edit these. So being realistic, I think, is a broad thing to say, but I say that I find that I'm really passionate about that because I have to keep myself realistic. And if I have to keep myself realistic and I do this for a living, then what do band directors that hire people like us need to hear? You know, if I need to be reminded about reality, then I'm assuming a lot of people need to be reminded about reality. So essentially we're all going into this year with 2 freshman classes. So whether you did as we like to call them, the COVID shows, right? The condensed version, or something that you may not normally do, but it was great for football games, and it gave the kids an experience, and you still didn't completely delete marching band from your program. That class that is going to be sophomores didn't really get the full version. No matter what you did, you didn't really get the full version. You didn't know there were restrictions at first, and even though you came from a district that lifted restrictions faster than others, you still were kind of like on eggshells for a hot minute, figuring out what it was that you could do. And so that class didn't get the full gamut of what you would normally present to your students. And now we have the 8th graders coming into freshmen who've had nothing at this point. So you essentially have 2 freshman classes. And I feel like we need to remember that on multiple levels. As designers or band directors or whoever it is, we really missed last year. We missed all of the things, right? It wasn't just the competitive side of things, because that's a whole other podcast, and I'm not super into that side of things. What, contrary to popular belief, I mean, I could take or leave the competitive side of things. But we miss doing the thing like we're used to doing the thing. High energy and rehearsals, and not worrying about 6 feet apart, and playing what we really want to play, and marching what we really want to march. And we missed all of that. And so as designers and directors, we have to check ourselves that our passion and excitement of it being normal isn't like making up for lost time. So we go over the top with all of our choices, and we go over the top with all of the visual designs and the conceptual designs and whatever. And then we forget, oh, we still have 2 freshman classes. So as adults, like, we have to remind ourselves that no matter how much we missed it and how excited we are, we still have to remind ourselves that we have 2 baby classes that didn't get the training and the technique and all of the things that we normally would provide on a normal timeline last year. So it's just keeping it real. And I mean, if you're like, there are so many different schools that even concert season looked different. Mm-hmm. You couldn't meet the same, and you had to spread out over rooms. And, you know, if you're like some of the schools that we work with, I mean, they had to sit 6 feet apart until like last month.
And
And
some
so
band
that's
rooms
not-
were not big enough.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And so you're meeting at two different times and you're not really together. And so that music education that we lost, I want to say, I'm doing quotes. I don't know if the people that don't see the video, I'm hand quoting here. The time that we lost, we've got to keep that in mind, that we've got to kind of start from the ground up.
Yeah.
We've got to go slow and steady and methodical, and music education has to win at the end of the day. It's not your show concept. It's not how big your props are. Nobody cares. It's not how much money you spend on XYZ. Nobody cares. Music education is first and foremost. So we have to be realistic with how are we going to do that for our program. And it's going to look different everywhere, right? Being realistic with fundraising. Most people didn't have fundraising. So as designers, we have to go in and not design as we normally would and ask what we normally would, because that just, fundraising wasn't a thing. So again, it's just the being realistic of where we are and not being so excited and trying so hard to make up for lost time by overshooting so far that the experience you're providing to your students isn't the one that you want to provide.
Man, that's so many great points there. I think the one thing that I might challenge you on only is this idea of you have 2 freshman classes. You probably don't even have that. Honestly, it's probably a little bit worse, because
it could be.
the incoming freshmen haven't had like normal band experience either. So you almost have like incoming seventh and a half graders coming in, and so musically they're probably not quite as developed as they used to be. They may have other challenges as well. But I think you're saying something that's so important for people to hear. And I want everyone to like really think. I can say this, maybe you can't say this, but you guys are like literally at the top of the heap in terms of skill, experience, and ability of what you do. And you're saying you have to be realistic with yourself. Yes. So if you are a band director and you're in Broken Hubcap, Missouri, cut yourself some slack. You're in your 5th year teaching, like you're still trying to figure things out. Like, cut yourself some slack and be realistic. If the people who at the top of the game are saying like we have to be realistic with what we've got, what we can do this year, then that's really going to apply to just everybody, that it's going to be a challenge. So, and I think we're all super excited about it. Like, hey, it's finally starting to come back. But like, pace yourself. You know, you're getting ready to go hit the gym. Don't lift out like the way that you did when you were in high school and college. Like, like just take it easy, pace yourself. Steve, sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, I mean, like we dwell on the fact that we have 2 freshman classes, but we really don't have the upperclassmen leadership like we've had in the past too. Right. And that is huge. Like when I know we've had a rise and fall of some people staying involved or not staying involved with the last year of being in virtual, so numbers are different from every band, and your senior class might not be as strong. And those seniors have really only had 2 years of marching experience, and your juniors that you're looking guidance to, for other leadership, they've had 1 year. So it's not like they really have that much experience either. So, doing that 90-minute show and doing tempos at 172 and doing all these things that you want to do that you've done in 2019, let's bring back the reins and, whatever contest you plan on going to, kind of figure out what time restraints you have to abide by and then figure out the show within those guidelines. There's no need to do a very, very lengthy show if you're doing just local Missouri type shows, and it's around 6 minutes. Now, if you go to the BOA things, also if there's other rules and regulations you have to abide by, but if you don't do that,
it's still not a 9-minute show. There's you can still stay at 7.5. I mean, I've worn the green polo up in the press box, and I will wear it again this fall. And I've worn the green polo, and never have I gone to mark in my scores in competition suite and said, oh, their show's longer. Box 5. Never. It's not about if it's longer. It's about what does it feel longer. If it feels longer, that's a whole other podcast. That's bad pacing, right? Like if it feels longer and you're like, oh, that wasn't 10 minutes. No. Oh, felt like it.
Yeah.
Right.
So here's the ballad.
There's
the
no
ballad.
spot.
I thought we were done. I thought the show was over.
I know.
There's more.
You're like, that's just the opener. Oh God. There's no box on the sheets about length of show. There's nothing. It's about what you do in the time that you have. It's about what you do with it. And if 6 minutes and I don't know, I don't have to look at those rules anymore, but like 6.5 minutes, I feel is the minimum time. But I could be wrong for Bands America, and a lot of schools tend to follow those time constraints. But you can do a lot of good for your kids. And you can do a lot of exciting things for the audience who's watching in 6.5 minutes, 7 minutes. You know what I mean? Because we're always going to go, speaking to the design side, we're always going to go 30 to 40 seconds longer than that's on that original MP3.
Yeah.
We needed more time for drill. No matter how much you swear you're actually going to play the tempos that the arranger writes, 8 times out of 10. You're not really at 172, are you? No, 164 adds some seconds to your show, right? When you don't take it show tempo. And so all of those things kind of add up. So realistic. Steve is totally right. There is no reason to do a 9-minute. It's just not necessary.
Well, and I had said before that, I know a lot of directors were thinking like, well, that show that we had planned to do for 2020, we'll just shelf that and then we'll do it in 2021. Yeah. But they may find that they don't have the horsepower to pull off that show this year, that with all the things you're talking about, with the fact that they've got 2 pseudo incoming freshman classes, basically, that they don't have the upper classman leadership that they've had in the past. The entire ensemble doesn't have the experience that it's had in the past, that they may not be able to just pick up where they left off back at the end of 2019.
Which leads me to my next thing is like usually I do, I don't know, 60 to 70 custom shows. So, this year we did like 25. And out of those 25, I bet you half of those were new shows that people actually, depending on where you lived at and what state, you still had marching band. People didn't feel a bump in it, while others had to do like a COVID style show, like maybe just an opener or whatever. Well, out of those 25 projects I've done, I'd say half of those were like, hey, so-and-so graduated. I no longer have this hoss and this thing. We have to do a new ballad. Hey, can we rework this opener because I don't think my woodwinds can handle the meat now? Can we take out some of the running 16th notes and put some more landing points in there? So I think it's highly important for the band director to take that advice, to take that moment and go through the score and find what's realistic, redo something or rewrite something to make your band more successful,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be a huge aspect for 2021. If you shelved your show, great, you're using it, but it's not the same band. So I'm telling everybody that I've been writing for is like, hey, let's back it off a half a grade level that you were doing, if not 3/4 of grade level. And depending on how much in-person instruction you had compared to virtual instruction, you might have to go down 1 grade level,
And it's
whatever it takes.
Yeah, whatever it takes. And I know there's people that are going to listen to this podcast and go, oh, well, that's easy for you to say because your top bands, I'm sure, haven't had to make any adjustments. You guys are probably fine. Here to tell you, every single band we work for has made adjustments. Every single one. Not every one, with the exception of 3. Every single team has had to go back and say, not sure that we're going to have the meat or the depth in this section like we thought we would. We graduated a lot of seniors, but then obviously the freshmen we're bringing up are not the normal freshmen that would come up, right? So I want to say, and I try to preface this often when I talk to people, that when we say these things, we don't mean these for this tier of teams that we design for. You know what I mean? It's everybody we design for. You can look at our resume and figure out who we're talking about and all the teams we're talking about. But everybody's getting those adjustments because everyone's in the same boat. I don't care who you are. I don't care how many eagles you have sitting on your shelf in your band room. Well, actually give it back, but whatever, a picture of your eagle. But it doesn't matter what you have. You're making adjustments. Kids are kids. Times are times. COVID is COVID. I mean, there's no one's flying under the radar on this thing or above the radar. I mean, everyone's making adjustments, and you should be because your kids are 16-year-olds are the same 16-year-olds cross country. And they didn't get the instruction that they normally get, and their mental health is a whole other level right now. And so all of that should be taken into account. And so people are getting on this podcast like, I thought we were going to be talking about design, but it's a part of it. Like that's a part of it. Like when we don't just sit here and design everything we can think of and like at the whatever, sure, I'd love to do that. But we're just like Steve and I are designers that think about those things. Like, what's this going to take out of the members? How is mental health? Is this going to work? Is this a concept that's actually appropriate for where mental health is right now? If you're doing a show about, I don't know, somebody going crazy, right? Those kind of shows, not appropriate time. Mental health is at an all-time low. And so those are things to take into consideration. So side tangent, but all of that matters.
Yeah. Even your concept may be something that needs to be changed.
Yes.
Yeah.
It matters. Like if you're doing some dark and angular and like really aggressive and black and crawl over the field kind of thing, I don't know. Is that what kids need right now? I don't think so, but I mean,
let's do an all Smurf show. We're going to do Smurfs and everything's going to be lovely and happy.
And unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah, we're going to do a Care Bears and Smurfs universe. That's what we're going to do.
Go ahead, Steve. I know you have something to say. Go ahead.
But yeah, but we're also talking about the physical aspect, the cardiovascular side of things, where, we're marching when you're in a normal world. You've had the opportunities to go outside, do this, do that, play basketball at the park, play tennis, whatever. But so many things are taken away to the point where kids spend a lot of time on the couch, virtually doing things. And so their athleticism or their physical attributes have changed a little bit, so they're going to have to, once again, and, the tempos matter because this is a athletically inclined activity of cardiovascular if you want to properly sound good on the move, so tempo is another good thing of like, hey, let's not go so fast. Let's worry about great sounds. If, instead of 152, maybe 148 might not be that bad this year, just so we can actually get some things going, physically, because that's one thing I worry about is velocity, because velocity creates effect, but you take that things away from the athleticism of what the kids can do, then we're taking away some velocity. So now I have to create different effect, and so that's what we're looking at.
Well, and that's a key point because the judging, if we're going to talk about the competitive side of things, which honestly, I'm just funny, because you're like, aren't you a judge? But it's kind of like my least favorite part of it all. It really is. It's like, can we just go be artistic and show off our kids to audiences? And I don't know. It's my least favorite part of it all. But the judging, the sheets haven't changed. Sadly, they have not changed. They're not going to change to accommodate where we are. So if you are one of those people that is still thinking about, well, I need to design a show to be competitive at this show and that show and whatever, then you need to be aware, like what Steve had just said, if speed and velocity isn't something that you can handle right now and that generates effect, then you've got to find it elsewhere. You know what I mean? You've got to find it in colors and aesthetic and this intellectual and aesthetic and emotional effect, right? And so if you can't find it in some of those speed changes and you don't have the 40-person guard you're used to having and you have more like 20, well, that's field coverage and that's effect, right? So you're going to have to get really creative. The judges' sheets are not going to change. And we're not going to sit up in the press box and talk about, well, you know what I heard, that a really rough year. We're not going to, that's not how we do it up there. So we're still going to use the same sheets. So if you're, really trying to be ultra competitive and you're trying to do the thing, then like Steve said, if you don't have the athleticism right now to pull off tempos and things that, and even the musical technicality, give me a good old fashioned brass technical feature. I'm going to clap and throw points all day long if it's done well. But if you don't have that and you're still trying to be ultra competitive at a show, you've got to find other ways to be effective, because effect at the end of the day wins the game.
Yeah.
You know, another side of things that, you know, I had my notebook jotting down things after you say something, Donovan, and you too, Lindsey. But like, you know, one thing for sure is like last week we went to a band concert, a percussion concert for our youngest. And he was not that excited. He was so super nervous, more so than excited, because he's never played in front of an audience. This is a 6th grader. Okay. And so his attitude after hearing live audience reactions to what they played has changed his whole attitude of wanting to do band and how he wants to do band next year. Now I start thinking about 7th graders. Right. Well, their last live experience they've had was their winter concert in 2019. That, like I keep on getting recordings from Max, from their band, of virtual performances where they perform it just there in the band room, not in front of anybody.
Max is our middle son. Sorry, Max is our middle one.
Yeah, sorry.
Gotcha.
But I mean, like they're doing, you know, recordings and then sending out the recordings, and they really get no applause. They get no reaction whatsoever. They just play the music and they go home. So like, you magnify that by 8th graders, 9th graders, so you know, now as many times you can perform this year. I'm not a parade person. I hate parades. You know, parades are not like the things that I'm a huge fan of, you know, but every small town has some type of puddle jumping, this, that, whatever, you know, rooster days, you name it. Every small town has a parade that you have to do. This is the perfect time to get as many performances as possible. Do as many things as you possibly can. You know, play at the grand opening of the new Chick-fil-A, just so the kids have the chance to play in front of an audience, because the first time you don't want them to play in front of the audience is the first home football game, you know, in 2021, and you don't know what's going to happen. You know, it's like,
oh, you know what's going to happen.
Oh, you know what's going to happen.
You know.
There's going to be a lot of surprises, you know, but some of that practical experience is gone too.
Yeah.
You know? So as much you can do.
We've talked so much about, I mean, so hopefully you can tell our minds are not, we don't think concept and glam and glitz and music and competitive. That's not the first thing the Ventos think about. Maybe that's why we can be successful at times, because we don't think about that first. I don't know, but you can obviously tell by what we've talked about thus far. It's about the kids and being realistic and rehearsal techniques and the excellence of what we do in music education. But we're happy to talk about all the other fun stuff too. But like, obviously we think on that level. I mean, we're parents, we're educators, we're all of that matters. So talk all day about the design side of things. That's easy peasy, but it's this other stuff that matters really right now. So,
and as we transition into other topics, you know, like if we go back and think about our show duration that we talked about, it's trying to go 6 minutes, then think about, well, how many minutes do you want the full band to be playing at one time?
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, a fortissimo effect usually occurs when the full band's playing. But if the full band's playing at a mezzo piano, mezzo forte, and a forte leading up into that impact, all it is just a little louder, but the same timbre. So therefore, you have to be a little more creative with those band moments. So therefore, we have enough gas to finish the show. So that's where it's like, okay, let's thin this out, like we talked about earlier, thinning things out. Can we land on one soloist for this phrase and then save the band to play the impact instead of having the band back up this phrase, or having an all skate where everyone's playing all the time prior to the impact? Let's rethink this just so that we still can generate timbral effect, musical effect, overall effect, cohesiveness of the program, but saving your wins so therefore they can maximize the show. The last thing you want to do is have the winds play 2.5 minutes of the entire opener, you know, and now we're going for a ballad. It's like, you're just like, they're going to be spent, they're going to be worn. So we got to be thinking a little more creative.
Again, I go back to the judges sheets. I mean, some inside scoop here, which everybody can download. It's online. There's no space on there that says how long did the band play all together? How long were they 2D? It's variety. That's what it's about. It's about variety. That's where we can give you credit. It's not about how long did you all play at the same time while moving? No, that's not a thing. It's about variety. So like he's saying, you have a young band. I mean, we all have young bands right now. I mean, I don't know anybody in the country who doesn't have a quote unquote young band right now. Anybody in the country. So you got to be really smart. Like they cannot play 3/4 of the opener 2D. Not a good choice, guys. Write that down. Terrible, terrible choice. Don't do it. Find ways. Give your percussion some time to shine. Give a soloist. Give a small ensemble. You know what I mean? Like you've got 6 kids in your wind ensemble that just didn't miss a lesson during COVID. Did virtual lessons, and these kids are at the top of their game. You feature those 6 kids. And you feature them for like 40 seconds. And then the rest of the band is doing a little, the other 2 Supremes and backing up Diana Ross, right? But that's a thing. Like as long as it's about variety, and variety is effective. You just don't want to hear the same thing the whole time. And so this is actually a saving grace, because then you're not asking your band to play all the time. You do not get more points because of how long your band plays all at the same time. That's not a thing. It's not a thing.
You guys are making such great points, because you're right. You have both the physical and the musical endurance is going to be diminished right now. And where me and the family are going to go hear the Boston Brass perform in 2 weeks. They're going to play in Joplin. Nice. And I know Jeff Connor from back when I worked for Ensemble years ago. And so I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I'm really excited to get to see you, and hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up. And my youngest son's playing tuba. He's going to be there, and he was like, "Oh, we'll have to have him meet the tuba player." So Belinda, my wife, and my youngest son Maddox were listening to the Boston Brass to kind of get him to hear it and see it. He's in 7th grade right now, and he asked Belinda. He was like, "So, could Dad play this kind of stuff?" Like, because he's always trying to figure out how good I am. Like, he knows I'm better than any musician he knows, but he's always like, "But is he this good?" And Belinda's like, he probably could, but I don't know that he'd have the endurance for quintet playing anymore, which she's totally right. And she's probably too generous on my ability to play the other stuff anyway. But it's the same thing with our students. Like they not only, they don't have the physical endurance of all the athleticism and being on the field and doing all the things they've been doing likely, but then they're likely not going to have the musical endurance of their instruments on their faces and playing. And so being smart and creative with how you put those together, so you maximize that for the best effect, is something that you're likely gonna. I mean, we've always have to be considerate of that, always with wind musicians, but even more so this time. So we're probably editing if we're going to reuse our show that we had in the books from 2019 for 2020. We're probably needing to edit that. We may need to edit the tessitura. We maybe need to edit how many of the 2D sections. We may need to edit some of the volume levels. Like we may need to make some edits even to that stuff if we're going to try to use it. We're likely going to have to. You're saying the best programs across the country are making edits. Yep. And so we're going to have to do that if we're in Prairieville, Illinois, or whatever.
Well, and I'll hopefully those that listen to this, let me save you, and so I don't have to go back and say, I told you so. If you're not making edits, you're incorrect. It's as bold as it can be, and feel free to edit that out, Donovan. I hope you don't.
No, it's perfect.
If you're not making edits, you're incorrect. It's not correct. There was no possible way that your students are who they were at the end of 2019. Think about it. That show that you shelved in 2020, you started thinking about in 2019. It's 2021. And if you think that your students have the same abilities and the same endurance and the same mental health and the same physical attributes and all of that since December of 2019, I mean, you're missing the mark here, man. Like it's not possible.
Yeah.
It's just not. And you got to think about the experience that you want to provide for your kids is like forcing and shoving that show down their throats as is, really providing that experience for your students that they actually want to come back. I mean, I don't think so.
One thing I think about a lot when I was as a band director for over 2 decades, whether I was teaching high school or college, you're not going to, out of the 100% of the kids that are involved, you're not going to mess up 10 or 15% of them. They're just smart kids. They're going to figure it out no matter what. You know, you can give them the best in class book or the standards of excellence book, and they're going to look at it and it just makes sense. Then you have another 10 or 15% that you could have a daily lesson with these dudes and they're not going to figure it out. So now you're looking at the middle 65 to 70% of those kids. And that's what we're trying to target to make sure that the show is going to be totally playable for those dudes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I've been kind of looking at as I look for those harmonic phrases in the score. How can I thin out some of those harmonic phrases? And with electronics and synthesizers and all that stuff, there's lots of times where you might have actually in 2019 had, like, you know, the low brass playing you know, an ostinato rhythm, you know, chordal thing underneath the melodic content. It's like, you know what? Let's throw that in a low marimba. Give these low brass guys a rest. Let's put that in a synthesizer. Let's just do a pad sound and not worry about the ostinato. Let the bass drums do that to give the ostinato thing happen, and give those low brass players 8 bars of rest so they can come in stronger here. Give these guys 6 bars of rest, and you thin things out like that, then all of a sudden the show is going to come alive again, and the kids are going to feel more confident, and it's going to pop. You know.
Yep.
Awesome. Man,
I also sent you I had a design timeline document that I put in the chat area. This is how I give this to all my clients. Like when I get a new client, they ask, you know, what's our timeline? Well, this is something I developed many, many years ago, you know, and it's just something that if you can stay along lines with that, I don't want to recite it because it's a couple pages long, you know,
right.
but it actually starts in November. Yeah, so many times people are focused on one thing at one time. You know, it's hard to be thinking about marching band when you have state contests coming up. I get it. You know, I understand that. I was in those trenches too, you know, but the more you can kind of keep on revolving the calendar around and juggling those plates, I think the better it's going to be for your program to be successful. You know, so many times, like when April 25th happens, that's usually the last day of any type of state band contest around the United States. That Friday, the last Friday in April. All right. And so I dread that Saturday and I dread that Monday, because that's when I'm going to get 15 to 20 emails of clients, Seriously. You know, and phone calls. Okay, let's talk marching band. Dude, you're 4 months late.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, when can I get my show in 2 weeks? No. You know,
we're dealing with the same thing right now with directors, because they're emailing us wanting bids, and because they have budget money left over, and you know, but they need to spend it by, you know, Wednesday.
Like now. Like, it's not gonna say last week.
And it's not like, can I get a bid on these 3 items? It's like, can I get a bid on my entire percussion?
Oh my gosh.
So that's 80 pieces and you need it by 3 o'clock. Like, and it would be fine if it was just you, but it's you and about 14 other directors today. Exactly. So totally get that. We understand it happens. We do our best to accommodate, but
sure.
Yeah. Do I have your permission to share this timeline?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because there is so many things here that would be, especially as people think going forward for the future, you know, being intentional about how they break up these things into these little chunks, make it a much more manageable process.
It's not overwhelming if you do that, if you use that timeline. If you're able to do, it's like cleaning the house. You know, if you wait for a Wednesday night and clean the entire house, it sucks. You know, but if you do this room here, this room here, this room here, wipe the counters, blah blah blah, and just do it little by little, you really don't miss it. You know, it's not one of those things that it's totally time consuming and stressful.
Right.
The problem is, like, when you're trying to cram November, December, January, February, March, April into May 1st, you know, and you have to worry about graduation and you're worried about this other stuff, then it gets stressful.
Yeah.
And I understand a lot of people don't have the budget to hire designers, full-timers, you know, and all that type of stuff, you know, so this would help them out along the way, you know.
If you're able to bring in a team to help you with, an outside team to help you with it, that could be fantastic. And of course, most, if not all of the top tier programs do that. But even, you know, surprising amount of mid-tier and even below programs are getting some amount of outside assistance to help, whether it's visual design, whether it's music arrangement or whether it's instruction, whatever it is, they're getting some kind of assistance to help. And so even if you're trying to manage this process internally with your own team, kind of taking this tried and true process and incorporating it into your timeline would be really effective. So let's talk a little bit about like, so all right, we're on board, but we're going to shift gears with our show. We're going to scrape the depression themed show that we
Yes.
had originally planned
Right.
for. We're going to do something that's a little more positive and uplifting. We're going to do something that's been scaled back a bit, both athletically and musical performance wise, to accept the reality of the musicians that we're going to have coming into our ensembles this fall. And we're kind of looking at all this and we're thinking, you know, I think I really could use some outside help with this. I'd love, because of the challenges I'm going to have, you know, I would love to work with someone to help me come up with the right musical elements to make the most out of the ensemble I'm going to have in 2021. And then I'd also love to have someone help me with some of the visual elements to help kind of cover up some of these problems that I'm going to have. So let's talk a little about what that process is like for an educator that's reaching out for outside assistance.
Let me talk music real quick, because mine will be pretty short. If you have a small budget, people try to go to public domain pieces, but that means orchestral pieces. But unfortunately, they don't play orchestral transcriptions during their band period through the course of the year. So now they just kind of play concert band stuff or poppy Disney stuff for the spring concert, but don't do orchestral type of pieces. And now they want to do something Tchaikovsky outside in the field. You know, you can't do orchestral transcriptions outside if you haven't done them inside on that. So on that part of it, you know, so many times I get frustrated hearing all these bands doing classical music, which I love classical music, but there's no way they're doing those orchestral transcriptions inside their classroom during their typical band class. They're playing music work stuff. They're playing all these other things, you know? And so that's not allowing them to be successful because it's a different weight of the notes. It's a different style, you know, it's those type of things. So then what do? Well, okay, now they're looking at go to Trisona and try to find something poppy, or maybe just something too poppy. Well, too much of one thing is not a good thing. A little bit of one thing is a good thing, you know? So having too much of pop music through an entire show is really kind of not as effective. It's not as, I'm not saying you have to be a highbrow, but you want to have variety of things. Mm-hmm. So you want to have a mix of things with that, you know? And that's why a lot of people, if you haven't designed your show just yet, I'd be looking at band literature at the grade 3, 2+ things of the music works, of Josh Publishing, of those type of composers that is going to make your band sound good. They don't raise anybody up into, you know, higher notes, ledger line notes, or too low notes or bad keys. You know, mm-hmm. I think I'd be looking at those things first and foremost. And just because you do an orchestral transcription or you like to arrange yourself and you do it yourself, you know, just because it's in B doesn't mean you have to play that Persichetti piece in B.
There's no such thing as the integrity of the piece. Like, I don't even know where that came from.
The integrity is out of tune. That's what the integrity is going to be.
Play it well. That's integrity.
You know, yeah. Let's hear that concert C-sharp chord. Yeah, that's awesome, guys. You know, I know. Put your 7th position a little further out. There you go. Okay, that's going to be effective. You know, so yeah. I mean, like, you know, put it in a friendly key. B flat, E flat, F. Boom. Yeah. You know. All right, that's my thing.
And even on the, I'm going to take that music thing a step further. Like, if you are arranging your music in-house and you have that ability, listen to everything Steve just said. That is super important. If you are not that person, I think a lot of people look at hiring arrangers or hiring designers or coordinators, and they think, oh my gosh, that's going to be so ungodly expensive. Here's what I will pitch out to you. I'll take Steve, for example, or any arranger, but obviously I like him the best. Just because what did you call it? Broken Hubcap, Missouri. Just because Broken Hubcap High School played that music and called it cityscapes or whatever, doesn't mean that you have to use that music and call it that. So I challenge you to go to different arrangers. Okay, being good doesn't have to be expensive. It does not have to be expensive. It does not. You can look expensive and sound expensive without being expensive. That's a thing. So you go to arrangers' websites and you find shows that are previously done, already written shows. Cover up the show title. Just cover it up. Don't even know what it was originally called and listen to it. What does that music say to you? Because something that might be called, I don't know, the rise and fall of New York, to you sounds like seasons, spring, summer, winter, fall. So cover up the title and listen to it. Well, because it was called this by this school does not mean you have to do that. So you're saving yourself time, energy, sanity, therapy sessions, and money by purchasing shows that have already been done by other people in a totally different state. It doesn't even have to be somewhere no one's ever heard it. It's just the music's already written. It's there. It's written for you to be successful. Cover up the title. What does that one say to you? Title it your own thing. Take it on a new direction. I think people don't realize you can do that. You know what I mean? Like you can use that piece of music in 17 different conceptual shows. Call it whatever you want. Doesn't matter.
Right.
But
and
that's
one thing,
an inexpensive way. Yeah. That's a really inexpensive way to be correct.
And
You're guaranteed correct.
And I would add on to that by trying to have some percussion arranger of some sort to go and overlook the music you just purchased, because one thing that I've found out that every percussion section is different. While the winds can all handle the same thing, it's like the front ensemble size is totally different from school to school to school. Yeah. So you buy something stock, it was written for 4 marimbas and 3 vibes, and you saw this band at Grand National do it, but now you have a xylorimbo and a gong, and you're kind of wondering, how come it doesn't sound so good? Well, you send out too much stuff, so that's where some of the funds need to be spent is those things to make sure, that the drumline can play what's written, the front ensemble can achieve the equipment challenges as well as the ability challenges, and if you don't do that, then it's just like you're already starting off in a negative sense of giving your kids the best chance to be successful. And never use a long ranger as a microphone. Never.
And never put your Met up front on the drum major podium, but that is a whole other podcast.
You're bringing up some great points here, and certainly hiring professionals costs money. There's no doubt about it. But so many times that money is such a great investment. I was thinking about as you were kind of talking about that, the experience we had. We were building a store, and originally we were trying to kind of do the design ourselves. And I remember thinking, like, man, we're already spending a lot of money to put the store in. Like, I feel like it'd be worth it to get a professional to help with some of the design choices we're making on the inside and some of the structural choices we're making. And so we ended up spending the money to bring in an interior architect and an interior designer. And yes, that cost more than what we originally planned, and it didn't end up saving us money overall, which sometimes it can. So it didn't save us money, but what it did was save us from making a lot of expensive mistakes.
Yep.
And in my experience, there's been times where we haven't done that, where yes, maybe I still ended up saving money, but the amount of money I saved wasn't worth it. Wasn't worth it. And it wasn't worth the lack of quality I had in the final product. If I would have spent a little bit more, I could have had a much better outcome. And so I think that's something for people to, and sometimes if you don't, I had an employee once who was asking money for something that we just didn't really have. And he's like, hey, if we can't do it, we can't do it. If we PO, we PO. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty much it, And so sometimes, you don't have the money, you don't have the money. And so we get it. But if you can, getting some professionals to come in, even if it's just some consulting or something to help you, could end up making things so much better for you. And I think if we kind of fast forward to the end of the 2021 marching season, think about like what do you want that result to feel like? And I think you might think about like what assistance do you need? But then I also would think about as we're planning our shows and our concepts, and this kind of ties into our very first topic here. But at the end of that season, are you going to think, man, I wish, with the band that we ended up having, we could have done a harder show? Would you rather feel that way, or would you rather feel at the end of it going, oh, I wish I wouldn't have pushed the band this hard. We didn't live up to
that
it.
one. It is.
Yeah. I would much rather be in a spot where I feel like, we probably could have done more. I'd rather be at that place than be at the place where I feel like, oh, geez, we bit off more than we can chew here, and now we don't feel good about what we've put together.
Yeah, man, and I'm going to be super real with this thing. Is like, let's be honest of what is the most visual part of your program, the visible part of your program. Like if your Star Spangled Banner on the football game doesn't sound like the Star Spangled Banner, then you're not going to have a good marching band season. If your fight song falls apart, you're not going to have a good marching band season. But look at the audience. Every seat is filled on a Friday night. Then fast forward to your band concert. The band parents show up, and it doesn't really matter. They're going to like what you do anyway. So like as for a community sense, if you're wanting to build your program, if you're wanting to build so many aspects of that, it's about the visibility of the marching band and the quality of that performance, because that's when people are going to start noticing you the most. And so if you're going to put money towards something, I'd be putting money toward that marching band just so they look pro, they sound pro, it looks produced, it feels produced. It just like, wow, this is, you want to make it feel like a Vegas production, not a Branson production. I mean, it's got to be that higher quality of performance, Hollywood-esque, not black and white silent movie-esque. You want those things.
One of the and the services like that I provide, and this isn't like a pitch for Lindsey because my workload is a little done right now, but one of the least expensive things that I provide, if we're talking about cost, but is the most valuable thing, which when I think about that, I probably priced that backwards, right? It's the most valuable thing I do, but it's the cheapest. I'm not sure how I didn't think about that, but it's doing production notes for programs. I go through the score and I stage every part of the band where they're supposed to go. Where's the guard going? When do they transition through their equipment without looking like they're running on fire? 40 people running to the sideline like they're on fire to grab that swing flag. Where does the battery go so that they're vertically aligned with the front ensemble? They have a sight line to the drum major, but the brass feature can still use them as timing support. How do we make it look like it has variety? How are there people moving and holding at the same time so it doesn't look like everybody's yelling at you all the time visually? So I go through the score and I draft production notes, and it is a really intensive columns and measure numbers and all of the things. And then I send that to the drill writer. And I send it with sketches. Like I draw out exactly what that impact's going to look like, and then arrows of where we're going next. And all that drill writer has to do is paint by numbers. And that band is guaranteed to, the second they get the drill, because how many times do you get drill and you pass out coordinate sheets to your kids or whatever, and then you look at it and you're like, the trumpets are not where they should. Why are my trumpets on the 10-yard line? Because you didn't plan it right? Like because you planned, you didn't think ahead. You didn't give us enough time as visual designers to get your trumpets towards the 50-yard line because they have the melody coming up on the next impact. But as someone who does it for me, who does production notes in that way, I can go, I can tell you right now, this, you're going to need about 6 more bars in this percussion feature, because there's no way I can get the brass back towards the 50. And if that's where you want them, that's not going to happen. Like I catch all of those things along the way so that when you get that drill, it's plug and play and it's done. Every time it works. The guard choreographer can choreograph things straight from the production notes. They don't need to wait for the drill. It's all there, right there. So that is something that is key, because you don't, as a I was a music ed major. You don't go to, they don't teach you how to design a marching band show. I don't remember that class. Sometimes they have, like Missouri State is now starting that now. Dr. Snow is starting that. Actually, go Bears. But they're starting that now. But that's not a common thing to have marching band design class. So you graduate as a band director, and that's great, but don't have false expectations of yourself or allow them to be put on you. You're not a designer, and that's okay. And that is okay. You didn't go to school for that, but some of us did. So implore, you know what I mean? Let us help you. Like we did that thing and you did that thing. And then when we join, that should be a really good thing. Yeah. So,
and one thing I probably wouldn't do would be just, I got the music, send off to the drill dude, you know?
Yeah, you have to give them direction.
You know, I mean, you're expecting this drill writer is Picasso and he can create art.
I don't think we want Picasso because he didn't have ears and stuff, but
Van Gogh. No, Van Gogh didn't have ears.
Because I've seen a lot of Picasso.
Picasso had ears.
No, it's Picasso.
Are they? All right.
Picasso was the one. He'll put the nose over on the
nose
side,
over here.
Eyes down
That's
here.
why I'm like, you don't want Picasso drill. We're gonna start calling it that because your battery's in all the wrong location. We're gonna start calling it Picasso.
Yeah, the snares on one side of your line. And
oh man.
But I mean, like some drill writers are visual designers. Some drill writers are just that. They just kind of put dots on the field, and then they don't worry about the guard until the band show's done, and then they worry about the band stuff. And then all of a sudden, all you see is the guard is there just around the band, and there's never any integration. You know, so a lot. Trust me, drill writers would rather have a production sheet handed to them so it gives them direction. Some people can handle a blank canvas. Some people need those little paint by numbers, you know, to make them as successful. You know, I work with a ton of drill writers, you know, and some are better than others, you know, when they get the proper direction. You know,
it'd be like somebody coming to you and saying, "Hey, I need all new instruments," and you're like, "Well, what do you need?" You're like, "I don't know, whatever you can do." And you're like, "But I don't know. What? Wait, what? Like, do you have?
What do most schools
whatever
get?
You think?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do most schools get?
Sell us whatever you want." And you're like, "Wait, I don't understand." That's what that feels like.
Yeah. I have a surplus of banjos. Let's get rid of them.
Yeah. Well, I want the instruments that 6A program has. Well, but you're a 2A program. I don't know that you needed what they needed. Yeah. Right.
And that's a whole other podcast too, right? Well, Vandergrift, they did the night of the opera show and won Grand National. So I think if that's winning, I want to do that. Whoa. Time.
Yeah.
Time out, Taylor. Like, that's not how that works. That's a lot of years and that's a lot of stuff. So it's a whole other podcast of like not trying to compare yourself to, you can't look at the top 12 at BOA and go, oh, well, that's what's getting the points. Well, then let's do that show. It's not about doing that show. It's not about the show that they did. It's about how well they did it. And that is music education. That has nothing to do with show design.
Right.
You know, and what's funny is like, you know, I know like on our website, and I'm once saying this is not a pitch or anything like that, but you see various kinds of prices between like the winds and percussion already written shows like $1,500, maybe $2,000 to tweak it to fit your band. And then you see stuff like a platinum package all the way to like $30,000, which are the BOA, DCI, UIL designers that are you know, at the top of their game. But there's stuff in between. We have like these pre-packaged shows, like maybe 30 or 40 of them that have already have drill written to them, music written to them, all the stuff that it's been successful. Now let's just adapt that to your band and let's thin it out. Do this, let's rewrite it. Whenever I'm not one of those businesses where if somebody wants a show off my shelf, I send it to them along with an invoice and say, good luck. I send it to them and I ask them, print it off, grab a red Sharpie, circle everything you want altered, changed, what instruments, you know, if you don't have a strong flute soloist, but you want another voice, tell me where to put where, scan it, send it back to me, and I will make it fit your band, you know? But a lot of times people just get the arrangement, think, okay, this is what's going to be, you know? And
it doesn't have to be that way.
You know, and if your arranger, when you buy stuff off the shelf, doesn't take the time to do that, then I'm not bagging any arranger, but I'd probably say I wouldn't probably be going back to that person the next year because he's not helping my band be successful.
Well, it's the same. You're not doing anything any different than going to buy a car. Like you go to buy the car, where do you go back and buy your second car? The person that helped you and talked you through it and understood your financial capabilities and understood what your family needed and that you had 3 kids and you had to have space for car seats and like that person or the person that just said, hey, this is a really cool car, you know what I mean, and just stood there and waited for you to make a choice. Like you're always going to go back to the person that's the most helpful and adaptable to you. That's just in general. That's for anything.
Certainly if they're not adapting it for your ensemble, it's, you know, what's the point? The whole idea of that is having it fit, because whatever was written likely isn't going to fit your group. It was designed to fit another group, and so you'll need to have it customized for you a bit, tailored for your ensemble.
I mean, like I know some guys that will sell 75 to 100 of their redos a year, but do 10 customs. I'm on the other side of that, where I do 60 to 70 custom shows a year, and my redo is probably 15 to 20 to adapt the bands, because a lot of my stuff was written specifically to make this one band sound great. Now your band has a different instrumentation, you know, that's wonderful. If you can make that show work, that's awesome. But we can always go around and adapt it to fit your group, you know? So
that's really cool. That's so much great things for people to kind of think about and be challenged with. One question that I had, kind of shift gears here, and we'll kind of use this to close out. Do you think, and the answer may be no, but do you think there will be any silver linings from the pandemic? Any silver linings over the last 18-ish months or whatever?
Yeah, I'll let Lindsey do this one.
Yes. Are you kidding? 100% silver linings. Silver linings. I think a lot of us, let's say us, let's group us all in here. I think a lot of us realized we just missed doing the thing with each other. You know what I mean? We were so charged with the competitive side, and we were so charged with contests. We were so charged with, I scored this last week, and then at this contest, I scored 5 points lower. And like, you can't do that anyway, but people do that. And so we were so caught up in the grind. And I think we realized, you know what I think it is? I think I just missed doing the thing with people. I think I just missed making music. I think I just missed performing for a crowd and watching my students get a standing ovation and watching my students light up. All of those band parents that got on your nerves because it was constant. Now you're like, man, I just really miss, Dave building my props and us like hanging out on a Thursday night after rehearsal far too late. And you miss that stuff. So I think this was a reboot for a lot of people of like, what's important? What is it? You know what I mean? I think there's a huge silver lining. And I think for the students, I've never seen students more excited about band camp in my entire life. Like, yes, sunscreen, 97 degrees, July, on the turf, let's go, I'm pumped. Like, never have I seen kids more excited to come back and be told, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. I know you're hot, do it again. You know what I mean? And they're excited. I think it was a reminder to us of why we do it, the parts that are important. And I think it was a reminder to the students that everything can be taken away at the snap of a finger. And I think we're going to see a lot of students come back and be their absolute best, the best that they were always meant to be. They just didn't know how to actually do it. And now they're so excited and they have this passion now because they've missed it. But I think we're going to see some really, really excited, driven kids this year for sure.
Yeah, so I agree. I agree 100%. I'm hoping that the travel and all that stuff is very conducive, that school districts allow all those things, overnight things, long trips and everything. And just so the kids get that experience, because, we went to, like I said, a different concert last week with our kids, and they had the seniors speak. And each one of them, one of the things that, what was one of your favorite moments in band? And I think every one of them said going on band trips, the overnight trips, just hanging out with your friends and all that stuff. I mean, like, I can't wait to see that again, where kids can hang out, together, not 6 feet apart, and just doing what we're used to doing.
Well, and we want the kids to be like, what was your favorite experience? Oh, it was playing and I nailed that that 30-second note run on the 35-yard line is the best I'd ever played it. But really, they're like, what did you miss for band trips? Like, dude, I got Cheetos at 1 a.m. at the Buc-ee's. And that was my favorite part. Because that's really that's the stuff they love. They do. They love it. It charges them. And it's those 1 a.m. stops at Buc-ee's that bring kids back. It really is. It's that kind of family thing that gets them to do the crazy, ridiculous things we ask them to do. I need you to jazz run 4 to 5 while playing that. And you're like, I'm sorry, what?
I want my Cheetos.
But it's the Cheetos, right? But it's those fun bus trips, right?
Yeah.
Where everyone's still awake at 2 a.m. that makes you want to say okay to your band director because they love being in the part of the program. So I think that part is really, I think it's a huge silver lining. We all needed a reset. Everybody needed a reset. And I think it's a really good reset for a lot of people.
It's always been one of my favorite things, when you're in band camp and you're trying to get that opening impact so loud and so full, and it's like, it's never satisfying. Well, the only thing you can trade in for that is like when they do it at the first performance and the crowd goes nuts.
Yeah.
Once the crowd goes nuts and that first loud impact, guess what? You never have to talk about volume again because they're just going to go for it. They want to do it. They understand at the end of this, when I finish this release point, I'm going to get a lot of applause. And the stronger I play, the more applause I'm going to get. And that's how it works.
Yep.
And I think those kids are going to see that, feel that, hear that, and just go for that, more so than any other year. Now, granted, there's some things, that we have to fix with some of the technique that we lost and some of those things we talked earlier in this podcast. But I don't think you're going to have to worry about the kids' energy or their drive in 2021.
Nope.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the thing that we appreciate more than anything. Again, like you said, we have taken so many of these things for granted, but just that ability to go and perform. And I think that's one of the things that in Missouri has been different than some of the other states that I've been familiar with, that it seems like most of Missouri hasn't been like just overly consumed with competition. And they've, that may not be universal, but I think this year more than ever, people are going to be less concerned about the scores and everything else. And they just want to go out there and perform and play in front of an audience and get that feedback and get all those feelings. I know for me, like 4 state wins is starting back up again this summer. We're going to play a Independence Day concert, like to be able to play music in front of an audience and have people applaud at the end and get to play music with my peers and my friends. Like, oh man, that's going to be so exciting to do that, and like, I can't wait. We just got the repertoire list the other day and we were in the car yesterday and Belinda's like, hey, have you made a playlist yet of the new music? I was like, yeah. She's like, well, put it on. I want to hear it. And so we're listening. She's like, oh, I love this song. And like, she's like turning the radio up. Like, we're just excited about like, we're going to get to like play this with our friends and then perform it for people to hear it live, not do something where we're doing a webcam deal and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be real performance. And we're totally stoked with that.
Lindsey and I had the opportunity to go down to Nixa to do a clinic consultant thing. And then we did the same thing at Missouri State. And both times we saw the first band there. I know I was tearing up. I think Lindsey was too, just because, just hearing that live band performance. I would drive down 3 hours every Thursday night, go down and watch Missouri State to watch my kid perform in the color guard and to listen to my arrangements, and listen to Dr. Snow and all those guys, just cranking it down at Missouri State. And it was just a hoot seeing a live performance, in the fall, that it was well worth the 6-hour round trip. Just to see that and hear that and feel that. And so I have a feeling it's going to be like that all over the place.
And I just encourage all band directors or whoever's listening to this podcast that keep that at the forefront of your mind. That's really what people miss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your show concept and I don't know, and all of this stuff. It matters and I get it and it's important, but it's not the important. It's not the thing. And, choose something design-wise that your kids are going to be excited about. Not something that's just going to be a drain, something they're going to be excited about. you've got them, they're going to be eating out of the palm of your hand. Mm-hmm. They're here right now. You have them. They've missed it. They want to come back. They miss doing the thing. You have them out of the palm of your hand. Don't screw it up by making things that aren't important. Don't screw it up by screaming and yelling because we have a contest on Saturday and blah, blah. Don't mess that up. They're ready to come back to you. They're ready to come home. They're ready to be encouraged. They're ready to be inspired, and they're ready to play for you. Don't mess it up by getting in the way, by making things important that are not important. They're just not.
And my last thing, I think one of you guys said something about rebooting. I think that's also for the band directors. This is the opportunity for you to change how you've done things in the past to make things even more effective, more obtainable, more educational, more positive, And so if you want a chance to reboot your program, this was the perfect opportunity to change your teaching style to make it more adaptable to not just 2021, but how the kid's psyche is, and how to go about your business, but getting maybe better results, but doing a different way instead of expecting a certain thing, how you've always done it. Maybe how you always done it is not the way to do it anymore, And I think this is a perfect opportunity for people to research that, redevelop themselves, and to see what they can come out at the end of the tunnel,
We've talked your ear off.
You guys have totally killed this. Like, you are both, you're so good. You each have like two sides of a coin to talk about, but you're talking about the same coin. And this, I just knew it'd be fantastic. Like, you guys are at the top of the game, and you have so much experience, and you've had so much success, and you're so good at what you do that, like, just winding you up and giving you a platform for a minute and just saying, just go, like, I knew would be fantastic.
Well,
and you guys
thank you for all the kind words. We don't see ourselves.
Appreciate that.
We don't see ourselves the way you see us, but
I definitely see you both that way, and just think highly of you. And I think I'm really grateful that you're sharing this too, because I think people, and I've been just amazed how quickly the podcast has gained an audience. It just kind of started as something I was already doing, a business podcast. So I kind of had the skill set to do it. And I realized, like, I didn't know what some of our directors were doing for recruiting. And so I thought, I'm going to just reach out to a few that I know and see what they're doing. I'll record it and we'll make like a podcast out of it. Like, that'll kind of be it. And those first couple of episodes went so well. I dawned on me, like, this should probably be a thing. Like, I think this will be a recurring thing. And it's just been so great. The conversations that have come through have been really enlightening and interesting. And I'm dealing only with people that are kind of in this Missouri area, and there's just so much knowledge to be shared. And sometimes even just sharing pain, sharing like challenges and hardships. Like, there's something to that that's helpful for us. That vulnerability, I think, is really helpful. But you guys just have offered a lot of advice. And like I said, I think when people who are kind of at the top of the game are saying, look, be realistic, and all the things we talked about in the first half, there's going to be people that are going to hear that and go, they're probably right. I was just going to pull that show that I developed in 2019 off and just thought we could pull it together, but they're right. I should pull the pace back. I should be more thoughtful about it. And I just think it's going to be super, super useful for people. So